welcome in, Sterling Baker. You've made it.
Yes, very glad to be here. Heather
Wonderful.
Hart.
Thank you.
/ Rollins.
Yes. Can I introduce you formally?
Please.
Okay, so Sterling Baker is a former substance use disorder professional who was in the field for 10 years. She began working in substance use prevention in the Spokane community in 2012. She later delved into working with youth, Department of Corrections clients, incarcerated persons, CPS-involved clients, and more. She believes in no bullshit counseling approach while also being person-centered and strengths-based, and that, above all, recovery is possible. Currently, she is working towards writing self-help and recovery journals with a close colleague as a way to continue helping others in a different and more creative capacity.
That's about it. That's
Did
all
I
there
miss
is.
anything?
We're done.
All right, it's a wrap. We can go.
Yeah.
Sweet. So, I really want to dive into your brain around addictions.
Yeah.
And substance use counseling. So, what brought you into that field? What led you there?
Oh, gosh. Okay, so when I was younger, my parents were like, you have to continue to go to college, like, immediately after you graduate. So I was, like, immediately enrolled in community college. I fucked off for so long, years. Like, just would show up to one class and never go back. Like, it was so bad. I was not in the mindset. And one day, my dad comes to me and he's like, I found this class that I think you'll really like. And back then it was a chemical dependency program.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
CD, very formal.
CD, old. I'm an old lady. So I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. And he's like, and we're going to take it together.
What?
What better accountability, right? What? But more than that is like, prior to getting into the program is just going through high school and just like my friend group and stuff. I had a close friend in our friend group, and he had really heavy substance use, so a lot of stuff going on, like where he was like wanting to try like lots of different drugs, which I mean is like totally normal, like teenage stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, my half-brother, who is now passed, he had really heavy substance use as well. And so, and just like kind of on my dad's side of the family, lots of substance use. So it's been around in my life, and drugs have always fascinated me. Like, people wouldn't do drugs if they didn't feel good, right?
Yes.
So
and they can feel really good.
Yes. So it's the science of addiction is truly like just amazing, like and also like completely like terrifying in aspects, right? And how addiction just, you know, it goes from that point of someone's just living their life totally normal, and then where it ends up, you know, when they're having their first like assessment, essentially. So I really was into the science side of things in college, and just very much really intrigued by my classmates as well. Lots of people in recovery, and like some of them coming out of like prison, like, and they like were just getting their lives completely together, and just like feeling really blessed to like hear their stories and stuff and where they were at. So it's just, it was a very interesting like time in my life, I would definitely say, going through that. So
how did you hold that, sitting with people who are getting out of prison for addiction, and then you're going to class with a dad who cares for you and loves you? And
I know, right?
Like, it's such a black and white.
It was so fun because, especially as you know, having elderly parents, like very like old school ideals and values, and I got to see my dad mature as well during this process. Like, he started like recognizing things that he like maybe like challenging old beliefs that he previously had. So at that time, he was very involved with the church that he went to, and he was even pushing to try and get AA groups started there. So like this is like a totally different like mentality from what he previously, had. So it was very interesting seeing him interacting with other people, and then just also just learning the stories of other, inmates, other college students there that were coming from all different walks of life. Some people had family members that were in addiction. Some people were in recovery themselves. And then others were just like really curious and wanting to go through the social service aspect of things and getting kind of a rounded environment. And then also we lost classmates that from like sometimes addiction, but also sometimes just getting, same thing, getting like back into the lifestyle or lifestyle taking them essentially. So, and there's some really amazing counselors still that came from the class that I was in. And so a very, very interesting, experience. So,
Yes. What was that like for you, and what has that been like for you as a professional in the field? Losing people throughout their recovery process in one way or another.
Yeah, it's really tough because
starting with the light stuff.
I know, right? It's so light. It's really, at first, like, it's a lot to go into the SUD field. Like, so, like, you have to, like, kind of build a thick skin really fast. The dropout rate of counselors, like, within the first 2 years is, like, huge.
Wow.
So a lot of people don't make it through their first 2 years just for SUD counseling. So coming to terms with, like, almost, like, setting boundaries with clients of, like, I can't take this home, like the boundary of work. And also, it's obviously terrible. Like there's some that just, you hear that they're no longer around or they're back into the lifestyle. And you thought like, for sure, like, I mean, they're working their program, they're doing everything, but I think it just speaks to the power of addiction and how we just need like so much more to help people because it's not just like a single thing. Like getting somebody sober is like not going to fix everything, like just stopping a drug. I think it's just like learning to be thankful for the time that you had with them, and then also being hopeful that if they have gone back into the lifestyle, like they'll find another way out again, that it's not, doesn't have to be permanent, and that as long as they know a door is open, like, so I feel like knowing that, hey, I have a good connection with this client, they know where I'm at, or they know where the place is, like whatever counseling, like at least they had one good interaction, and hopefully they'll come back eventually, or they'll hit that meeting. Like, so it's just kind of those things where you kind of have to just put faith into, hey, they were listening, like something caught on there. Like they found that spark for a moment.
So really trusting them to be their own individual, to be capable. Yeah. I think we do so much coddling when people are in addiction. We learn to shrink so that they'll just stick around or stay around. And so putting those boundaries and trusting that when they're ready, they're going to step back through that door is really this piece of empowering the individual to make a choice in their own addiction.
Yeah, that is so true. And I think I got really lucky when I got into the field because I got to meet a lot of old school counselors. So, and a lot of those guys were like old school AA, NA guys working the program. Like, and they taught me some of the most like valuable information that I know, and really had shaped the way that I interacted with patients. And now, as we move over to a more like person-centered and harm reduction approach, it is very difficult to try and hold accountability or help somebody find accountability in themselves sometimes with those measures. I'm not saying that it's like terrible, but I'm saying like, you know, sometimes a mix of old and new is like really can be the most powerful thing.
A balance.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What do you believe the root of addiction is?
Gosh, I think a lot of it, of course, I mean, genetics, brain disorder, like it's the brain is primed differently. You're, you know, set up differently. And especially with that on top of, you know, we can't just say like, you know, chicken or egg, like it's both. Like it's going to be the social environment. It's also going to be genetics playing a part. And also then with that social environment too is like just, you know, the people that we surround ourselves with, right? Like what makes it that some folks like get, you know, end up finding addiction when they find that one perfect drug that is like the best thing they've ever had. And then they end up, sorry, I'm like brain mix.
Good.
Let's like rewind that part. Ask me that question again.
What is the core of addiction?
Core of addiction. Genetics.
Okay.
And also environment.
Okay.
We'll go with that for sure, because brain is completely set up differently. And then also when we talk about altering brain with substances and huge hits of dopamine that we don't typically get when we go ride and bike, right? It becomes so much more difficult for someone to just enjoy going back to like doing a word search puzzle. Like that's just not going to sound like a fun thing to do in recovery.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
So, definitely the root of that.
Yeah. How do you tell if someone is a beer lover versus an alcoholic? Like when you look at that spectrum of like, how are we defining an addict?
Right.
Because I think there's so much, when we look at addiction, so much rationalization, minimization, justification.
Totally.
Like there's so much opportunity to be social around substance use, whether we're talking like psychedelics or beer or weed.
Yep.
Yes, we live in Washington State.
Yes.
Like, what is that spectrum?
So that is such a hard such a hard question for people to answer and like agree with on top of that.
Yeah.
So especially when it comes to legal drugs, quote unquote, alcohol, marijuana, especially, it is essentially like, how can I be addicted to something that's legal? Like, because of course, addicted mind is going to try and rationalize. But what we have to look at is like an entire encompassing, or what encompasses a person's life. Like we're looking at all aspects of their life and how much the substance is interfering. So like, have they had withdrawals, right? So is one thing. And sometimes people don't realize that they may be having withdrawals. Like, so delving into questions regarding that with that person of, have you ever noticed like you may like have the shakes, like if you haven't drank for, you know, so many hours. So a lot of it is gathering information. And of course, when somebody comes in for an assessment, people can feel very like almost attacked, but also like you're trying to find something essentially, right?
Yes.
And that's like such a normal thing, is because as people, we want to protect ourselves. We don't want to think anything is wrong, especially when addiction is so sneaky.
Yes.
We're also looking at like, physical health. Okay. Like, am I taking medications that I shouldn't be drinking on and I continue to drink? And am I having interactions with that medication? Or maybe like I have like broken a leg and also like ended up getting in a fist fight or whatnot and ended up getting hurt when I was drinking. So we're looking at different ways like health is impacted as well. Also just like where the person is at. So readiness to change. So does the person maybe realize that there is something going on? Or are they like, I don't understand why I'm having this assessment, whatever.
That denial piece.
Exactly. Yeah. And then also just like pattern of use. So how often are you using? How much are you using? And on top of that, are you increasing your use to get the same effects, or are you having tolerance breaks? So especially like with marijuana and it being so prominent right now, especially in Washington, is like a lot of folks don't realize like their tolerance breaks are actually like an indicator that, hey, something may be going on. Like I'm building a tolerance to what I usually smoke and I have to like take a month off or whatever. Yeah. So, and of course, like when we talk about these things, it's not like, okay, this one thing is looking real tough but everything else complex. It's very complex. So we're having to look at so much of a person's life and also the type of environment they're living in. Like, are they able to hold their job? If they are holding their job and maybe the substance use is really taking a hold, is it... are they, do they miss work every now and then after, a really like raging weekend? Like,
you're really speaking to quality of life.
Totally. And that's where it is so, and I've had this conversation a lot with past clients of like, they're like, well, I hold a job, like I'm involved with my family. And so my big question always to them is like, but what is the quality? So I get it. You're doing it. Like you're making it work, like quote unquote. Right. But what is the quality and what would it look like if substances weren't involved? And why do you feel like they may need to be? So it's really helping, a person like, I kind of was thinking of this last time when I was reading the questions of like job as a counselor is the same thing as like my friends. Like I would let you know if there was a booger on your face, right? And so like my goal as when I was doing counseling was to help people realize like, okay, is there something going on? Like, do I got a booger on my face?
Yes.
And hopefully help them identify some maybe thinking patterns that may not be conducive, and also the substance use patterns that aren't working either. Because really, again, you can take the substance out of the equation, but if you are still the same asshole you were when you were using, you're still the same asshole. Like, so it's really getting to look at the your entire life. I mean, like, I think that's such a powerful tool for somebody. How often do we get the chance to be like, I get to like inspect my life and really take like a hard look at it and be like, what do I want to do now? Like, what am I going to do with this information? And I think it takes a lot for a person to commit to that and be so vulnerable. And I see that with clients all the time. Like, it is the most like vulnerable, like can be at times soul crushing, like, but also rewarding experience that people can go through.
Yeah. It makes me think of that book, Quit Like a Woman.
I've not heard of that.
Yes, I can't remember the author off the top of my head, but she talks about being a functioning addict, where she never got a DUI, she never had chaos with her boyfriend, she never, right, like, she was functioning,
right? But
when she really stopped and evaluated the quality of her life, there were all of these loose threads, and I think it is such a gift to be able to pause in life and ask, do I want to continue committing to the ways that things are happening, or do I want to do a reset? I think oftentimes we feel so powerless and like, well, this is my life.
Yeah.
Like, I just got to get through it. And it's absolutely not. When
Right.
we're working from empowerment and a healed space, it's like you have a choice in every single moment. You have a choice in every single decision. And that can be so hard to inspire into people at times, especially when they're in addiction.
Oh, yeah.
There's such a feeling of helplessness or core wounding that they haven't dealt with that's really driving that addiction. And so even the opportunity to pause and do an assessment and having someone else look at you, it's that vulnerability and shame piece of like, ugh, I have to protect myself. Like
100%.
It's
like,
so hard.
Yeah, it is really difficult. And it's like, especially because sometimes especially SUD counselors, we can be looked at as like the parents.
I'd be like, mental health's great. Go to SUD, and they're like, oh.
I know, right? So I always tell mental health counselors, I'm like, you guys are like the grandparents. You get to have like fun and like, oh, everything's great. When they see us, they're like, God, I fucking hate you. Like,
because you're like accountability, you're like boundaries. Like, I feel like mental health is like when you're ready.
Yeah, like
we'll
it's all
take that
good.
step when you're
I'm
not gonna
like,
force
oh,
it.
you want to keep doing what you've been doing for the last 30 years and stop it. Like, no.
Yeah.
So it is like, it's a lot as a counselor to take that on. Like, you know, somebody's not pleased with you. And you're disrupting their lifestyle, right?
Yeah, you're threatening the thing that they live for.
Totally. And so it's really just learning, like, you know what? This is just what addiction is. This is part of it. Like, it is protecting in itself. And that you just have to remember, like, but they're showing up. Like, that's the biggest thing. They are showing up. They don't have to be there. So a lot of clients will say, like, I don't have to, I have to be here. And I'm like, you don't have to do anything.
No, you can go sit in a jail cell
Yeah,
and get
you
out
can
in
be
3
in
weeks.
jail. You can continue to use if you want to continue to use. But the fact is they keep showing up. And obviously there's a reason. There's a motivating factor. And you just have to hope. Like, and that's the biggest thing. I just always go back to my college days of the counselors, my teacher that used to tell us. She was always like, you just one thing that they may take from treatment, 10 years later, it might click. Like that is just, you don't know when and where, but hopefully they take at least one thing from it. And I think that's another hard thing that folks have with substance use counseling is people want like the numbers. Who's, how successful are people? And that was something my dad had a hard time. He's like, how do we know it's like working? Counseling's working, right?
I could see that. His
Logical.
brain.
Yeah. And there's like none. We can say like graduation rate maybe, but that doesn't mean long-term, we don't have anybody following, which is so unfortunate because, and I'm sorry, you'll hear me digress a lot in this,
fine.
but because this is like one thing that drives me bananas. So like cancer patients, right? They have this horrible thing happen to them. They have follow-up scans every several years to make sure everything is good. They have people that monitor. With SUD, once you graduate, there's nothing.
You're just out in the world,
You're
floating.
Out. You hope that they've connected with an AA/NA group, but a lot of clients don't prefer AA or NA. And unfortunately, even though they're great options because it's building a support network and people to call you on your bullshit when they start seeing it. No, if they don't have that connection, what is the hope that we're having is, okay, I hope that they're hopefully made like some really good sober friends. There's really nothing else we can follow up with on it. Whereas other long-term illnesses or like real, the chance of like of relapse happening, like there's people are monitoring, they're helping them because it is a long-term disease. It's not like, oh, I've been sober for 2 years, like I'm good. Like there's always the risk of remission happening.
Yeah. And life happens, right?
Totally.
Like we can have our shit together. We can be sober for 15 years. And then something happens with our partner
Absolutely.
or our dog, and we're on that slippery slope of craving, or, well, I have it under control, so what if I just use one time? No one would know. I can control it is a big justification I hear. Like, I can handle it, or I'm only going to have beer when my drug of choice was meth.
Exactly.
And it's like that snowball.
Yes.
Yes.
It happens. We always say relapse happens months before, years, it can start from one specific point and then just start snowballing until it eventually just hits someone real hard, and then they're like, what happened? And so especially during treatment, we really try to get people to identify like their triggers, and also taking like those daily inventory of like, what things am I doing to make sure my recovery stays strong, or that I'm staying smart in my recovery, because you can only be so strong. Like, one great counselor that I got to learn from, he said, like, don't say stay strong in recovery. He's like, even brick walls get chipped, right? The brick walls in here, they're cracked.
Yes.
And he's like, the best thing you can do is stay smart. So a lot of it is just like helping those clients be able to identify, what am I going to do to make sure I'm smarter than the shitty committee of my brain, essentially, right? Like, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And support network and community, healthy, safe community is so important. And what we know is that usually in addiction, there comes chaotic relationship and relational rupturing. And what fuels that addiction again is that core wounding, which happens oftentimes relationally.
Yes.
What would you say to someone who really struggles to support someone in active addiction? Like, what is that line between supporting and enabling?
Right. So this is a loaded question.
Yeah, I really set you up.
So
don't kill me after this, please.
No, it's such a loaded, because I've had clients before that are like, my parents never gave up on me, and like they did things for me during recovery, like helping them. Others are like, my parents were there too much for me, or my friends, or whatever. So I think it's about definitely supporting with boundaries, like, is the biggest thing. We can't make someone recover. Like, and this is something that is a problem with especially families in addiction. So the family dynamic, typically finds a balance during active addiction.
Homeostasis.
So exactly.
How are we functioning? What's our normal? Who's doing what?
It's so fun. Like, as human beings, even though we can be kind of chaotic, like, we find a way to stay, like, have that homeostasis in our lives, whether it be chaotic or not chaotic, right?
Heartbeat.
Exactly. And so when there's usually someone in active addiction, the family learns different roles that they're going to play. So sometimes, usually it's like the wife or the husband, the partner is going to be like the hero, right? They're always going to clean up the mess. They're gonna, they're always going to be there for them. And then we also have like, you can, of course, you know, like the family roles, the negative ones, right?
Yes. The scapegoat.
Yep. Scapegoat, all of that fun stuff, which I highly recommend if anybody ever wants to like read up on that. It's very interesting read, so you should. But really, I mean, that's how it is. And so what ends up happening is when someone gets sober, everybody else is still in their roles. So that hero who wants to be there and fix everything, and this person who's in recovery, they're like, well, I can go do this on my own, or like, I'm capable of doing this. And the other person is now feeling attacked, left out, threatened, because we all gain something from our roles that we end up you know, switching to. So really addiction, like there needs to be, and community needs to be so much more understanding. And also like long-term, like hopefully in like the next 100 years is what I can hope, is there's a better model for families to heal together, that family, friends, people that are close in each other's lives, like that they're, because it's, everybody has to heal from it. There's like deep-seated things that happened, right? We're not going to be our best when we're in active addiction. Our family may have said really hurtful things to us when they've been frustrated or angry. And so there's like open wounds on both sides. And in order to like truly heal in those kinds of things, there needs to be so much work on so many different levels than just besides the person in active addiction.
Yes. Yeah. So it's that compassionate inquiry of what was everyone's experience, because the whole family's in addiction together.
Totally.
The whole family does the cycle of addiction with you. So even if you're sober, there can still be that resentment of, you don't get to just walk away from the hurt you caused and look at what it cost me.
Right.
Like, and you got to be high the whole time and I had to be in it.
Exactly. Then the like, it all starts like just the circle of blame and like shame, which doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help anyone in recovery and doesn't help the family that's trying to recover. And so I would definitely say when we talk about like community and support is like, there's a difference between being like showing up to somebody's house and being like, I'm putting you in the car and we're going to a meeting. Like, I think for some people that's like you know, if they do that, great. And if anybody's ever done that, no shame. But
and it's not about you.
Right. But the thing is that, you know, we can offer help in a way that sets boundaries and also puts accountability on that person. So I could say, you know what, if you want to hit up a meeting, here's the meeting list and I'll go with you. You just let me know. Like,
putting the ball back in their court.
Totally. Yeah. So it's definitely, we want to like not coddle, but we also want to make sure that we're supportive, with set boundaries to also protect oneself. Like, we all need to protect our energy, right? At some point. And we can't be working harder than somebody else is in their recovery.
Yes.
So, and I think so. In a vague gray answer, I would say, again, just think about not working harder than someone else is.
Yeah. Which is so applicable to so many providers, even in mental health, because we are not taught that in school. We're taught that we should have the answers. We should be able to fix it. We should be able to handle and tolerate it all, even as like we're living through the vicarious trauma of everyone else's story.
Right.
Like, you're not allowed to have a bad day. And it's like, this shit does actually impact me and my health. Like, when you're sitting on my couch and you're in active addiction, I am in active addiction because I'm constantly having to navigate your world.
Oh, yeah. There's so much that counselors take on. And especially when, so I think something different, like with mental health and SUD, we're taught like, don't reflect emotion, essentially, like, which I think is a more old school way of counseling.
That is so old school.
So I know. So
that,
essentially,
hurts my heart.
I know, right? But honestly, I've only had good feedback from doing that from clients. So I'll explain to you, like, so, I mean, we can be like proud, right? Like, that's so great. Or like, hey, that is hurtful, but we try not to cry. If a patient is crying or a client is crying, we're not going to be crying with them. Like, and so that was something that was like really drilled into my head. They're like, don't try and show like you're gonna cry.
Be a human.
Don't be a human, right?
We got that lecture, and many years into it, it doesn't work.
I know, right? And so, but I've had patients or clients tell me like incredibly like just some horrific things that have happened to them, especially as children, right? And so I'm like brick wall, like I'm so sorry that has happened to you. Like, how do you feel like, you've processed that? Have you had the ability to? And I've had clients before be like, you're the first person who hasn't cried about my story. And they were like, it makes me feel like it's not it's not horrible, but like that I'm not like scaring you by telling you what is going on. That's the point. And so I was like, and so I know when I would talk to some other mental health counselors, I'd be like, oh yeah, we don't cry. We don't do that. And they're like, you monster. And I'm like, I swear it's not intent. It's not because I don't feel for them. Yeah. It's because sometimes you're that first person that's not going to make them scared to tell their story because they feel like you can handle it. Yeah. And I'm not saying it's like the healthiest thing, right, by any means, because like one note I wrote down regarding the questions today was like dealing with what you hear from clients and stuff is like an on-off switch. Like prior to starting in the field, like I definitely had days where I was like, oh my God, I think I'm like gonna cry. Like this is a lot. And then as you continue, like there's just like, for me, there was an off switch. Like it was just shut down. And looking back, of course, I definitely would do things different in my career with that type of self-care and like what I would recommend to others now. But it definitely like you have to find a way to like cope with those things and feel them without also letting them like drown you.
Yes.
And so
what helped you heal from vicarious trauma?
Oh boy.
Can I use the word burnout?
Burnout, 100%.
Okay, where we are.
Burnout
in our
is
shame journey.
So prominent in the mental health, and even more so, I feel sometimes the SUD field. It is crazy. I
mean, you're sometimes a recovering addict yourself, and you're swimming in addiction all day. Like, how are you not going to be burnt out, traumatized, re-traumatized?
Totally.
That counter-transference of when your story shows up in another's.
Totally. Or, if your family life is reflected, or your friendship in the past is reflected, and they had a totally different outcome, I think as it is, we're all human. Like these things you're not susceptible to, you're not like immune. Yeah. You're not immune to like just being like, oh, that doesn't bother me. Like they can talk about something exactly like my mom is, or exactly like my grandfather was, or it's just you're gonna have that and experience it. And back then, I would say having another counselor, huge. I think a good counselor should always have a counselor.
We always joke like, who's the grand therapist of them all? Totally. Like, I want the grand therapist.
Exactly.
The wizard.
Yes. It definitely feels like that. And like I found like a lot of things that helped me kind of switch off my brain to like more creative mode. Like I used to crochet a lot. That was something that I could just do and kind of zone out and kind of leave the day behind. And then like comic books. So like a lot of my things are a little bit nerdier. But I feel like, and then also just being able to like bitch and have fun with other therapists and counselors, like I think is the biggest thing is like, you know, joy is, you know, multiplied and grief is cut in half when you're sharing, right? So I definitely feel like being able to have like a healthy, like friendship group in a professional capacity that like they get it.
You're not going to traumatize them
Totally.
or trauma dump.
Exactly. Yes. Totally.
And knowing those boundaries too, I think is important because, and you know this, when you're surrounded by therapists and all your friends are therapists or counselors, that's all you talk about is like the case at work or da-da-da. So really learning, this is my sacred time of taking care of me. So we're going to actually go do a fun activity. We're not going to talk about work. We're going to go try something new is
100%. Or be like, we have an hour at dinner to bitch. And then the rest of the night is like the fun stuff, right? Like, so again, boundaries, protecting your energy, protecting your time, like, is going to be big. Like, in the SUD field, I mean, there's been a few, big, like heavy, like not heavy hitters, but like big, people in the community, like in the SUD field that have like passed from heart attacks, like just dropped dead. Like,
I believe it.
Because of the stress and stuff of like managing places for so long that are high stress and high intensity. And
well, and sometimes it really is life or death. Like 100%. I can remember cases that was like, if we don't make contact with this person by the end of the day, we will find them in the morgue.
Yes.
Like it's
or when you
so much responsibility.
Yes, absolutely. Or when you have the press release that you have to email to the community, to the county to let them know, like, my client was in the news. Like, that's a lot. Like, I mean, you're sending that in because you have to notify them that, hey, they've been receiving care through us. Like, so it is like a very complex and like stressful environment in itself, you know, so.
So you've stepped away from SUD counseling, and how has that impacted your own personal health as we're talking about the stress impact? Like being just able to take a breath, be out of that. What have you noticed in your own healing journey?
So I couldn't be happier with the years that I worked. Like I loved my job. I loved my clients. I could not be happier. I feel like this new direction I'm taking is allowed me to focus on my own needs, like my actual like internal healing and kind of thing. I've like finally been able to address like binge eating and have like graduated binge eating recovery treatment.
Congratulations.
I know. I'm so happy. And really just being able to kind of figure out where I want to go in a different way to help others, like without being tied to like a clinic. Just because clinics can just be unhealthy as well, unfortunately.
Yes.
And also the stipulations for SUD counselors, with like state requirements and also cost of the licensure, and also the ability to like, even though with my years of experience and, my college degree, because I don't have a bachelor's, I can't practice privately. So, I mean,
there's so many barriers to just doing a job and being good at your job and being good at being relational and like isn't enough.
Yes. It's very, it
real.
could be disheartening. When I was, you know, before I made the switch, I was looking at how can I do this independently? How And there are a lot of red tape, a lot of stuff like that. But
we'd actually have to have a government who wants a healthy society.
Yeah.
And we don't have that.
I know, right?
Yes.
Because there's so much room for the substance use field to change, or like mental health, there's a lot more flexibility. And with SUD, I kind of wish there was more flexibility with treatment options and just being able to meet the client in a more person-centered capacity, besides 3-hour groups, like 4 days a week. Why? So
yeah, I hear you on that for sure. There's such a huge gap between what someone actually needs in recovery and what our government is willing to pay for. And requirements, it's bullshit.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, partly why people here don't get healthy.
Yeah.
Is because they don't have the time. Like, I can remember people being in mental health and chemical dependency program at the same time while also being CPS involved.
Yes.
Like, you had to be in court every week. You had to be in a group 4 hours minimum a week. You didn't have a car. You didn't have childcare. You didn't have, like, you're still living in a trap house. Like, there's no way that you're going to be able to sustain the amount of pressure on you to get sober.
It's so difficult. And like working drug court, which was like, I loved working drug court, but if you want to talk about a program that puts somebody through like the hardest shit of their lives, let's talk about drug court. Because like it is not for the weak by any means. You know, they're going to their required AA/NA meetings. They're doing their groups weekly, and they're not just like coming like once a week to start with. They're coming 3 times a week, and counseling sessions, and going to court,
and a full-time job,
and jobs, right? And also, like, if they don't do what they're supposed to do, if they're missing a lot of stuff, if they end up like not going to all of their meetings, that starts turning into non-compliance. And what ends up happening is you're going to do some jail time.
And then some would rather do jail time. They choose that.
And then if it's not jail time, you're going to be looking at community service. And drug court has saved many people's lives, don't get me wrong. But I mean, it is like...
It is not a compassionate program that sets people up for long-term health.
Right.
Because it's behaviorally based.
Yes. And that's, I think, again, when we go back and look at things, is like the structure is great. Like I can see structure wise. I see what they're trying to do, and I see it working. But then when you have so much freedom after treatment, what does life look like? What is,
There's no more safety net. And there's no more access. Like, they've built these bonds with the people that have supported them through the hardest times of their life. And then you've graduated, you've done this good thing, and then you lose all the most safe, important people in your whole world. Of course you're going to go back to using, you know? Like, some people don't. But,
thankfully some people don't.
Some people don't.
But
some
for
people do it.
Most people, majority of people, large portion of people, I mean, there's usually some substance use happening even after, regardless if it's their drug of choice or not.
Long-term sobriety really demands a healthy, safe community and a healthy, safe support system.
100%.
So, I'm very curious to hear more about these creative ways of helping people. Tell me, like, what can we look for?
Well, what are we talking about right now, Heather? Are we allowed to talk about it?
It's all you,
Is
babe.
it?
Yeah.
Are you good?
Yes.
Are you okay with us spilling the beans?
Yes.
Okay, so I definitely have always liked writing, and like Heather knows,
Amazing.
I love like emails. Send them to me. I'll go ahead and like look them over, jazz them up a little
you
bit.
missed a comma. What are you doing, bitch? There's a period. That's a semicolon.
Right. It's fine. And so for a while, I've really been wanting to do some type of recovery journal. And I was like, you know what? I know a really like bad bitch that I absolutely love. And I'm going to tell her, like, let's do this. So Heather and I have been working on a 90-day, I would say like recovery, but it's really based on for anybody that is identifying there's something that they want to change in their lives. Like usually when we're looking for a self-help book, something has led us to that point, right? Like things aren't like super duper amazing. Like my life is going super great. I'm going to get a self-help book. So yeah, God, I wish it was that easy. But for most of us, I think it is like, okay, I want to do a self-help journal because something's not quite aligning right in my life. And so a lot of this is kind of like a mishmash of mental health and SUD. And in substance use, the first 90 days of recovery are the hardest because the brain is trying to change. It's changing back to like sober stasis, right? But it wants to go back to where it was. And so there's this huge flux and a lot of symptoms that come with that change in sobriety. And so we always say first 90 days is the hardest. And that's why you'll hear in AA and NA a lot 90 and 90. So you do 90 meetings in 90 days, hitting it up all the time. Again, it's that like staying smart in recovery thing, right? So it's based on a 90-day kind of journey for yourself and really focusing on how we have the answers inside of us and we can learn how to build our own support system within ourselves and the things that we need to do that are going to help us accomplish like our future goals and what that like healthy lifestyle is going to start looking like. What is my best life going to look like essentially, right?
Oh, the journey to the best quality life that you can imagine. It's based on just very general tools and skills.
Yes.
We'll be doing brain drops, like what's actually happening in your brain on day 30.
Totally.
What do you need as far as support?
Right.
Emotional charting. It's a beautiful blend of her expertise and my experience.
Exactly. So I think it's going to be really exciting.
Yes.
And hopefully it's just the first of many to come. So I definitely think it would be very interesting to hear what kind of journals people would like because as we went over like many of the journals that we own ourselves, there's no like perfect one by any means. But gosh, it would be really nice to get like super close to making the perfect type of journal, right?
Yeah. That's really hitting topics that haven't maybe been addressed in such a direct way. Because addiction, I mean, I know we've talked today a lot about substance usage, but addiction is a spectrum, whether we're talking about exercise, food, substance, gambling,
sex,
porn,
video games.
Games. Addiction is really can impact every part of someone's life in different ways. So when you understand the core elements of addiction and how to stay out of addiction and develop more of an empowered sense of identity and help, resiliency, accountability, empowerment.
Yes. Resiliency is such a great term. Because learning to be resilient is a thing. Not all of us are just programmed to be like, there's some kids that have the ability to be super resilient as children and they carry that onwards. Not everybody is built with that capacity. So really learning how can I take care of me?
Yes.
You know, how am I able to do that and be there for me finally?
Yes.
Because so often we want to rely on other people. And sometimes, and people are, like we just said, all of us are human. Like, you know, our friends are going to be going through mental health stuff, SUD stuff. They're not always going to be able to be there or show up for us in the way that we need, let alone let us communicate in the way that we need, of what kind of capacity we need them to show up in. So I think, building resilience is a huge thing, which is possible.
It is possible.
Yeah.
I think that everyone is capable of healing. And if someone truly is ready to heal, they're going to be able to, no matter what barriers stand in their way. But I think the vulnerability and humanity and asking for help, you don't have to walk that path alone.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing I see in addiction is the hyper independence and the shame that keeps you out of asking for help and asking for support. Like, I have to do it. I can't be in my shame space. Well, everyone has a shame space.
Yep.
It's about finding people who can hold it gently with compassion and continuing to encourage you wherever you're at.
I think our society has bred long enough, like, independence. Like, it is okay to need help in areas. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's okay for us to learn to be vulnerable, because obviously it has not been working for us thus far.
I think we can say so, as we have one of the highest rates of opioid usage in the country. Yeah. And almost in the world, behind Portugal. So
it's insane. Yes.
Well, and I hear you taking a step back in your own stress and really evaluating what you're wanting to hold, what you don't want to hold, still pursuing that passion.
Yeah.
But also allowing space for your story and your healing to also take precedent.
Totally.
And I hear that in, like, graduation for you. Like, it worked.
Yeah, it did. It was the biggest commitment I think I've ever made to myself. I didn't miss a single group.
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
It was pretty bananas. I was, like, driving from work at 3, getting home right at 4 to log right onto the computer because it was a virtual program. And again, that's where it's like, if you want it, you'll make it happen. Yeah. Like, and it's okay. Like, people have to realize that sometimes it gets to the point where it's like, it's that ambivalence, right? The stages of change, you know, and, you know, I'm kind of half in, kind of half out, like, and you can't make someone want that. Like, the thing is they're showing up, they're doing some of the things, but if they're just not ready to totally put their time into it, we can't make somebody do that. And all you can do is just keep the door open, and is the best way to go about it. And eventually they'll get there. They'll get there, hopefully, right? Yeah. But it definitely, I mean, like, obviously my binge eating disorder was probably been going on since I was a kid. Like, and I'm 35 now, and I'm finally, like, I'm in binge eating recovery now, you know, hopefully almost going to be going on a year soon. And I have to work really hard to make sure I don't go back to my eating disorder.
That's smart recovery.
Yes. So I have to do a lot of things to maintain that. But again, it's important enough for me. And I also have, like, educated my family and my friends, and, like, I'll bring up stuff sometimes when people are like, oh my gosh, I can't eat this or whatever. I'm like, there's no bad food. You'll hear me say that all the time.
Yes.
And so, like, learning to advocate for myself, like, for me, it's really hard when I hear people say, like, oh my gosh, if I eat the, you know, carbs are so bad, or this and that, or I can't believe I ate all this stuff. And I'm like, that is so, like, triggering. But again, I can be like, I can stand up for myself, and I can be like, there's no bad food. And, like, hey, you know what? Like, we all need carbs. We need carbs. I am fine eating them daily.
Their energy.
Yeah.
Our body literally won't function without them. Yeah.
And I think prior, I would just keep my mouth shut and not say anything. But I mean, like, if it's important to you, if you feel like it's an important part of your life, and you're going to stand up for it, you know, keep doing what you're going to be doing, and it will work out.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
not everybody's.
I'm glad that you came from that lonely place into that empowered place.
Totally.
So that you could heal.
Yeah.
And continue healing. It's going to be a long
100%.
journey.
Yeah.
So I'm proud of you.
Thanks.
You should be proud of you.
I'm very proud of me. So
good. You put in the work.
Yeah. So I definitely feel like the journey from everything, you know, the college to working in the field to divorce to recovery, like I don't regret any part of it, essentially. Like, I feel
value in its own way.
Yeah, like the things that I've had the ability to learn from my clients, because my clients teach me. Like, I'm sure you learn from your clients
every
as well.
Day.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh shit, I should probably look at that. Okay.
And I feel like, you know, we get to experience people's journeys, see the successes, the failures, the learning moments that come from those.
There's nothing better than when someone begins to understand their own value and their own power.
Totally.
It is like goosebumps. You're like, it's stuck. Like, you get it. And then it's like, take it.
Yes.
Run with it.
Do it.
Go for it. You know,
Absolutely.
when they're like, I did that shit. And you're like, you did do that shit.
Exactly.
It's incredible.
Yeah. It really is. So
awesome.
Yeah. They always are teaching us.
Yes.
And gosh, what an honor to have had that and learned from that and seen it. So
sacred.
Yeah.
Good. So thank you for coming in.
You're so welcome.
And thank you everyone for listening in. And we're definitely going to have to have you back on. You're a fountain of good information.
Sounds good.
I'm excited to hear more about what you're doing. And where can we find you for now?
So for now, I am nowhere.
That's like 3 out of 3 today. Like, it's like, I don't know. A website that doesn't exist yet?
No website. Maybe some like, feet finder stuff. No, I'm just kidding.
The second job.
I know. You can find me on OnlyFans, you know.
Oh, no.
No.
We are not plugging OnlyFans. Let's talk about unhealed trauma. Okay. Absolutely not. It does not come from a place of empowerment all the time.
I love it.
I cannot endorse it.
Totally kidding, Mom and Dad, I swear. And so, to be determined, there will be a website, all that fun stuff. And if anybody ever needs just like advice or just needs to talk with someone regarding someone in their life that they would like to get resources for, Heather has my contact information, and
which I will share generously and have
yes.
the mid session phone call starting.
Yes. So always happy to assist folks. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, my dear. I'll chat with you later.
All right. Sounds
and I'll
good.
talk to everyone later.
Woohoo.